Today is the end of the jump racing season, and this year's champions are on parade here at Sandown. Between them, they have won millions. They are the best of the best. All of them are elite athletes, and it's no accident. They're the result of selective breeding. For the first time on Inside Nature's Giants, we'll be looking at an animal that's evolved through unnatural selection. The thoroughbred racehorse is as big as a cow, yet it can run at 45 miles an hour. By looking under its skin, we'll reveal how it pulls off this astonishing feat. How it turbocharges its breathing, generates a massive spring in its stride, and dopes its own blood in the surge to the finish line. Join us as we go deep inside the racehorse. For the punters who gamble £12 billion every year. For the richest oil sheikhs in the world. For the owners of the truly great racehorses like Red Rum and Desert Orchid. And for those with a lifelong passion for racing, there's one elusive question, a mystery that remains unanswered for generations of racegoers. What is it that makes a champion? 2 centuries ago, it was this question that triggered an anatomical investigation of a racing legend that ultimately led to the founding of the Royal Veterinary College.
Well, this is him. This is Eclipse, our very own famous racehorse, well, or what's left of him.
It's like being in the presence of royalty. I mean, this guy was a superstar more than 200 years ago.
He was a superstar. He won every single race he started, and he won it with lengths and lengths ahead of any other horse. His owner said Eclipse wins, the rest is nowhere. That was absolutely correct.
So why is he here?
Because when he died, his owner wanted to find out what made him such a successful racehorse. So they brought a French guy over here in 1789 to dissect him. But these measurements started him off to think about how Eclipse moved.
He's right there, isn't he?
Yes.
Saying, what is it about this animal, from a biomechanical point of view, that made him so exceptional? It's the same question we're trying to solve today.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than 200 years on from the first ever dissection of a thoroughbred, we're going to revisit that age-old question and explore the anatomy of a racehorse that's about to undergo a post-mortem. Let's keep going around that way. Sadly, this 4-year-old thoroughbred sustained multiple fractures to his limbs that would not respond to treatment. So the owner took the decision to euthanize him. As scientists, this gives us the opportunity to show the inner workings of this incredible animal. Joining me is comparative anatomist Joy Reidenberg and equine locomotion expert Alan Wilson. You're looking here at a prime athlete, apart from its chronic lameness. What are the key elements of this animal that make it such an extraordinary athlete? I mean, clearly very long legs.
We've got these long, very strong legs that are adapted for running. We've got this massive muscle mass that provides propulsion, mostly on the hindquarters.
It's colossal, isn't it?
We've got these massive lungs that are coming all the way from up here in the shoulder. And if we come up towards the head, big eyes, big ears. It's a flight animal. It's expecting to escape being chased by predators. So it's got to see those predators coming. It's got to be able to hear them coming. It's got to be able to communicate with the other members of its herd.
And that's the key, isn't it? That's being exploited here in a racing athlete, is the fact that naturally these animals are great runners because they have to get away to avoid being lunched. The ancestors of modern horses lived in herds and grazed open grasslands. Their evolutionary story is driven by speed. To survive, they needed to run fast. This was the driving force in the development of their powerful limbs.
we're looking at the forelimb of the horse, and this is the equivalent of our arm. And if you look at how it bends, what you're going to see is this is actually not a knee. We're looking at the wrist of a horse, an elbow, a shoulder. So the leg actually starts way up here, and then from here to here, this is the elbow. So this is the arm bone. Then we come down here in the forearm. The forearm is actually not two bones like us. It's two bones fused together into one bone that's carrying that weight. Then we get to this, which is the wrist. And then from here on down, we're looking at the hand of a horse. But the hand is very unusual because instead of having 5 digits like we do, the horse is simply walking on one. So the nail at the very end is the hoof.
The story of how horses came to walk on a single finger is a classic tale of evolution by natural selection.
The evolutionary history of horses is, as it happens, very well known. There's a very good fossil record. The earliest horse, Hyracotherium, the dawn horse, lived about 65 million years ago. That's about the time when the dinosaurs went extinct. And you can see that far from walking on just the middle finger, it walked on 3 or 4. And these fossils here, these are casts of fossils, they go at 10 million year intervals. So 65 million years ago, 55, 45, 35 and 25 million years ago. And as you look through time, you can see the shrinking of the side toes and the increasing reliance on the middle toe or middle finger. And if you go to a modern horse, the outer fingers have disappeared altogether except for these little vestigial splints.
Longer limbs with fewer bones led to a longer stride, meaning the ground could be covered more quickly. In the case of the thoroughbred, this adaptation has been fine-tuned for ultimate speed.
Alan, I'm struck by how absolutely skinny this leg is. When I think about a draft horse like a Clydesdale, they have humongous legs, but this is really like little tiny toothpicks.
Yes, it's good to pick them up and swing them through the air quickly. So the thoroughbred has got this absolutely tiny leg with these tiny tendons supporting the weight. It's just amazing how small and light they are.
It seems fragile to be so tiny for something this big.
It's fragile, but there's more than a ton going through it every stride, so it's remarkably strong.
For centuries, artists were fascinated by the gait of the galloping horse, but to paint a frozen frame, they had to guess what was happening in the blur of limbs. At the National Horse Racing Museum in Newmarket, Simon Watt's been looking at how they painted these fast-moving animals.
For many years, racehorses were misrepresented in paintings because no one understood how their gaits worked. Traditionally, galloping horses are depicted in mid-air with both their front and hind legs fully extended. There was much debate as to whether they had all 4 hooves off the ground at any one time. The matter was finally resolved by the photographer Muybridge in 1878. Muybridge photographed a galloping horse called Sally Gardner. When he put his images together, he created some of the world's first ever moving pictures. He proved that indeed all 4 limbs were off the ground at one time, but tucked under the body, not stretched out as depicted by contemporary artists. He also showed that at one point during the gallop, the entire weight of the horse is supported by just one leg.
To unravel the mystery of how an animal that weighs half a ton can run so fast, we're going to explore the key adaptations in the limb. Alan has revealed the first part of this puzzle. So you're focusing here on this muscle here, the biceps, which is that muscle on me that you see when you curl your arm. How does that pathetic-looking biceps manage to move such a long leg really quickly from back to forward?
If you look at the biceps, it is a small muscle. It's only about half a kilogram, but it's actually got all this tendon tissue in it. See all this really strong stuff like our Achilles tendon. That's all very springy, so that acts like elastic and will store energy.
Kind of like a rubber band.
Yeah. So if we look at the leg, think about what our horse is doing. It's swinging its leg forward.
And at that point, this muscle we're talking about, the biceps, is very flaccid. There's not a lot going on there.
Yeah, but as Joy emulates the ground and pushes the leg up, gradually...
My finger's in there. You can ping that now, that rubber band.
Well, pinging is exactly what's going to happen. Because about this point, this joint, the carpal joint, is suddenly going to bend forwards like this. And as that happens, the foot will come off the ground, flick forwards, the whole leg folds up, very quickly indeed, and then that muscle will throw the leg forward, so it's throwing the elbow forward, and then this flicks out, sorry Joy, and then triceps will extend the leg out, and then it comes onto the ground again, and then it's ready for the next step.
There are two parts to the gallop: flight, where all 4 feet are off the ground, and stance, where each foot contacts the ground in turn. As the horse moves the body over the extended leg, the biceps muscle stretches, storing elastic energy, much like a cocked catapult. The leg then buckles, releasing the stored energy, which throws the leg forwards into the next stride. This catapult action gives the lightweight biceps muscle 100 times more power. The evolutionary story of horses changes with the arrival of humans. Cave paintings from 17,000 years ago show them as wild animals hunted for meat. Then, around 6,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Humans discovered horses could be rounded up and tamed. And eventually, the horse became one of our closest companions. For more than 4,000 years, horses have been used to take people to market and into battle.
I suppose it's a moot point whether humans have domesticated horses or horses have domesticated humans. That you could make the same point about dogs, that domestic animals in some sense have evolved mutually with us. And it's not quite true to say that we just took a wild animal and bred it and selectively bred it for our purposes. It happened both ways, and dogs and horses have exploited humans and used humans to carve out a new kind of ecological niche for themselves.
Man has shaped the modern horse through selective breeding.
Okay, I'll have mine.
And of all the breeds, the most tightly controlled is the thoroughbred. Breeding these exclusive racehorses is a closely guarded and extremely private business.
I've come to Culmore Stud in Ireland, one of the top thoroughbred breeding centres in the world. No better place to learn how it all works.
Some of the most valuable horses in the world live here. These guys are celebrities. They live in 5-star accommodation and are under 24-hour surveillance. The stallions are the absolute elite, and it can cost 6 figures for their services. This is Yates, one of the superstars. Yates is the only horse in history to have won the prestigious Ascot Gold Cup 4 times.
It's not going to be his day. It's Yates. Yates goes to the top of a long list of Ascot greats. A stayer supreme and immortal. He wins his 4th.
Yates's ancestry can be traced back 25 generations to the early 18th century. In fact, every single thoroughbred on the racetrack today has descended from one of just 3 founding stallions. By far the most prominent of these was the Darley Arabian, whose genes can be found in more than 95% of modern racehorses. For this thoroughbred mare, it's her first encounter with a stallion. By mating her with Yates, the owners are hoping his winning genes will be passed on to her offspring. Yates may deliver his stud services 5 or 6 times a day to different mares, so he needs to be shielded from feisty partners.
Yeah, we've just put the covering boots on the mare, so that protects the stallion if he gets a kick.
So this is boxing gloves and a gag?
More or less, yeah.
What goes on within this padded arena is rarely witnessed by outsiders.
He seems to be just nuzzling the mare, getting acquainted, as it were. But this stallion has done this many times before. Simple as that. Very efficient. No cuddling afterwards. There is so much resting in this one mating. As you can see, this is a very controlled environment. This is a factory for breeding. The real question is, though, will this produce a winner?
Back at the dissection, we want to investigate further how the thoroughbred's remarkably thin yet powerful limbs work. It's incredible that such matchstick legs survive the crushing impact each time they hit the ground. By placing a forelimb in a press, we'll see the stresses it undergoes as the horse accelerates to a gallop.
OK, we're in the jig now. Joy, do you want to start pumping?
So now this would be starting to take some load when it's walking and carrying the weight on there.
Yes, if you feel the tendons, you can feel that they're under load. They're getting like a piece of taut wire.
Very taut. You've got one there, a second one there, the deeper one.
Yep.
So you've got big, solid bands.
And they're coming all the way down from up here on the elbow and all the way down to the foot. We're probably looking like trotting at the moment. So the cannon bone is actually getting the load of these tendons and the weight, compressing it and bending it, because the tendons are trying to bend it like a bow backwards.
So this is like the bow and that's the string?
Yes.
Can we load this a bit more to see what happens when it would be at full gallop?
Yep.
How low would that fetlock get?
It will come down to about here.
Wow.
Just listen for cracking.
Keep going?
Keep going.
Okay.
And whoa.
Stopping there?
No, keep going.
Keep going? Further than that?
Yep.
I can't believe how much that's spent.
That is extraordinary.
The tendon is 20 or 30 times better than a steel spring in storing energy.
A horse's leg works like a pogo stick, compressing and recoiling. When a leg hits the ground, the downward forces cause the fetlock joint to drop to an almost horizontal position, absorbing some of the shock. Tendons running down the back of the leg act like springs, stretching to allow the joint to drop, but preventing it from collapsing. The stretched tendons store elastic energy, which propels the leg into the next stride. This allows the horse to move as fast as possible, expending the least amount of energy, while cushioning the leg from impact. So Alan, we've now got a leg at gallop, fully loaded. What if another leg hits the back of the tendon through the very thin skin?
Oh, that tendon's under load and it will really break quite easily. I'll just, with a scalpel, come round the back here.
Wow.
And that's what would happen in your overreach.
Wow.
End of racing career.
But when this is working as it's supposed to, this is a beautiful piece of engineering.
Absolutely superb. We don't have the sort of materials in engineering that we do in biology.
The thoroughbred's limb is the secret to its success, but is also its Achilles heel.
In nature, when natural selection favours some particular characteristic, it's got to keep being viable, got to keep surviving in all other respects as well. So it can't just go relentlessly favouring running speed. But with racehorses bred by humans, where it's actually humans who do the selecting rather than nature, because humans can feather bed domestic animals and keep them alive, it's possible for us to breed single-mindedly and relentlessly for one characteristic, in this case just plain running speed, and never mind if the animal ends up less viable, less able to survive in other ways. And I'm afraid that is the case with racehorses.
Racing is a high-risk sport for both the horses and the jockeys. The Grand National is as famous for its casualties as its champions. Out of every 1,000 horses that run a race, 2 will die, and a third of those deaths are due to fractures. But are some racehorses more prone to injury than others? The measurements taken on Eclipse 200 years ago are helping to solve this mystery. What have you discovered then, having had this incredible archive of information from this superstar horse?
Well, we got very similar measurements from contemporary racehorses, and we looked at how did Eclipse compare to this. And I have to say, and it astonished me a bit, he was actually average.
That's the surprise, isn't it?
Yeah.
That actually that has to confer some kind of advantage.
Yes. The thing is, it does make sense in a way, because this is a racing machine at the very limit of the speed it can do without breaking down. But there has to be a trade-off, because obviously if you're injured, you don't run fast. But also, if you run fast, you're more likely to get injured. So only the horses that strike the middle of this will be successful.
So actually being average is an advantage.
I think so. You know, I love going to the races. I enjoy racehorses. I know so do you, and so do many people. But I think we have the responsibility, especially as vets, to make sure these horses remain healthy.
To reveal the horse's final line of defence against the pounding its limbs receive, we need to look at a cross-section through the lower leg. We'll see how it survives the shock of transferring a ton of weight each time the foot strikes the ground. Ah, good bandsawing, sir. That is a beautiful thing, isn't it, when you cut through it in a section like that. So just take us through. Yep.
Long pastern, short pastern, coffin bone, and the hoof wall.
So that's the nail on the outside.
So that's the nail. All this load is transferred to this coffin bone, and it then hangs off the hoof wall, these laminae, which are like sheets of tissue connecting that to the bone. So if we turn the foot over, these are in this region here. So when the foot's on the ground, the coffin bone is hanging off these, pulling this hoof wall down, spreading the tops of the heels outwards, and then the whole hoof is kind of hinging backwards and outwards.
So all of the force is distributed to the outside, almost like a bell shape.
Yes.
The coffin bone is not attached directly to the sole of the foot. It hangs from the hoof wall, suspended by several layers of tough tissue called laminae. This means that each time the horse lands on one foot, the entire body weight transfers to the hoof wall, dampening the force. The hoof wall is made of horn, which flexes and spreads the load further. This shock absorbing is most dramatic at the heels, where the horn is younger and softer. It's a brilliant mechanical solution, a living, growing structure that can withstand immense forces. But the horse's feet did not evolve for the pressures of roads and racing, so they need additional protection.
Ideally, we're looking for the most symmetrical foot we can make it without distorting the hoof wall too much. Basically, this is the hoof wall all the way around here, and we're working within the perimeters of the white line that runs just inside it. So basically, anything outside of that is what I can work with. Anything inside of that is the horses, you know. We're trying to protect what's inside.
We have been nailing metal shoes to horses' feet for more than 1,500 years.
And the other secured shoe.
Across the horse world, that expression, no foot, no horse, everybody knows it. You work with their feet the whole time. Do you think it's valid?
Without a doubt, that's the only thing in contact with the ground, and you know, they soon let you know if there's something wrong with their feet.
We're beginning to put together the puzzle of how something the size of a horse can move at such speeds. But to really understand how it achieves this, you have to go deep inside. Like any athlete, a racehorse needs to deliver huge amounts of oxygen to its muscles. Now the team wants to understand the secrets of how it breathes.
Once we can get the tongue out, then we're going to be able to get the larynx out and then the trachea. So we can take a look at that whole passageway.
While Joy's working on the head, what we're trying to do is carefully get out all the digestive system, which is ready to pop. So there could be a little mini explosion at any moment. Get all that out of the way so we can then get access to the chest cavity and to the lungs through the diaphragm. So we're kind of working at the respiratory system from both ends at the moment. Helping us will be Catherine Whitwell, Newmarket's leading equine pathologist. You need lots of hands doing this job.
Right. I've just removed the stomach, the small bowel and the large bowel. They're very large structures altogether. And this is what's left of the abdominal cavity. It's a very large cavity.
And everything so far grossly looking pretty normal?
It looks perfectly okay. We haven't done a very detailed study. So the diaphragm is in here, intact at the moment.
And you see that beautifully here. I mean, it's stunning with all the swirling striations on it where the kind of tendinous parts of it are. This is a lovely, lovely dissection because you're really getting a sense now of how massive the chest is in this athlete. The horse has 18 ribs compared to our 12, giving them an enormous chest cavity to accommodate their gigantic lungs. So, shall we see if we can get some air in here? Okay, here you are. Okay. So if I clamp round the tube.
Okay. And I'll seal it up here.
Okay.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that.
That is so stunning. Look at the way it's rising up to meet the ribs. That is huge, isn't it?
Those are massive lungs.
Huge, huge lungs. Particularly relative to the size of the animal. Yeah, but look how long it's taking for us to fill them, and it has to do this 140 times a minute. Yeah. It's still filling. I mean, that's... The ribs are now moving, look. So mechanically, Alan, I mean, when it is galloping, do you get changes of the chest to try and open up wider to be able to give more space?
Yes, the chest will open wider, intercostal muscles will pull the chest out, and then most of the breathing is coming from the diaphragm, going backwards and forwards.
So once
it will hold its chest.
Yeah, so once the chest is expanded, then it just held there.
Like that, yeah.
Wow, look at that. In biology, that is one of the most stunning things you will ever see.
I can understand why it has such a large windpipe. It has to get that much air in and out quickly.
In less than half a second, those have to be filled and emptied.
So in the time it says to take one, if I say 1, 2, in that time it's breathed in and out twice.
Oh, 4 times.
4 times. Wow. 4 times. So 1, 2, it's gone in, out, filled that 4 times.
And look, I mean, the lungs are there, 2 metres away from the nose. So it's having to move through all that plumbing and pipe. It's really hard being athletic and big.
Wow. It was breathe like we sneeze.
When the horse is galloping, each intake of breath is synchronised with each stride. The muscles that control breathing and the muscles that move the legs work in complete harmony. As the horse lifts its limbs off the ground and raises its head, the guts slide backwards, drawing air into the lungs. When the horse lands, the head drops and the guts slide forwards, pushing air out of the lungs. It's this incredible piston action of the guts on the diaphragm that enables the horse to breathe such vast volumes of air.
Shall we deflate them?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, go.
Feel that current.
Breathing in and out 140 times every minute whilst it's galloping. Next time you watch a horse race, that's what you need to have in your mind when these horses are thundering to the finish line. That is absolutely extraordinary. A galloping racehorse breathes up to 40 litres of air every second. So to win a race like the Ascot Gold Cup, that's around 10,000 litres of air, the same amount we breathe in an entire day. But even when a horse looks to be a winner, things can still go wrong. In the 1956 Grand National, Devon Lock was 5 lengths clear with the winning post in sight, when suddenly and inexplicably he did this. His bizarre behaviour remains a mystery to this day. Devon Lock was owned by the Queen Mother, who famously declared, "That's racing." I'm in Newmarket, the headquarters of racing, and this is an extraordinary town. 70 racehorse trainers, 2,500 horses, and these guys get priority everywhere. And I'm here to meet one of the top trainers and to try and get a sense of what it is he's looking for in a racehorse that could tell him the difference between one that can win and one that will be an also-ran.
Morning, Mark.
How are you? Great to meet you.
And you.
In time for the gallops?
Yep, let's go.
There's no hanging around here. So when they're exercising like this, what are you specifically looking at?
I just want to check that the movement's fine, they're not struggling, they're not sweating profusely, they're not, tired and unable to take the word.
Do you get to a point where you definitely get better at being able to spot the ones that are going to be really good horses?
The beauty of racing is that there are no rules. The horse that costs $5 million as a yearling can be useless. The horse that costs $5,000 can be good. And there are no rules. Nobody can see inside their heart when you buy them as young stock to see if they've got the ability to run. That's why we all do it, because we're all dreaming of finding the next champion.
On that basis, do you think that we do push horses right to the edge of what a horse is capable of doing, and therefore they are a bit on a kind of knife edge between glory and catastrophe?
Possibly, although it's a pretty hard thing to prove that. How many horses with great ability just don't make it for whatever reason, physically or possibly mentally? I mean, nobody knows the answer to that.
There's one organ that plays a critical role in directing air to the lungs. It can be the weak link in a racehorse's performance. It's a part of the body Joy's always keen to explore, the larynx.
So Mark, I've got the whole tongue out here. It's very long. We're sitting inside the oral cavity like that. These are the cut ends of the hyoid bone that was holding the larynx and the back of the tongue up against the skull. This is the larynx, or voice box, and this is the trachea. You can see it's sort of like an accordion. When you pull on it, it stretches out.
Can we just open this up a bit more through these muscles? We've got some Alice forceps, great, and we can just hang on to the edges. One there, and one there.
That's good. Now if you pull that apart, I'll cut right down the middle.
Okay.
So what you're looking at now is a view as if you were in the nose, looking down from the back of the nasal cavity at the larynx. So there's a nice bridge formed between this epiglottis and the soft palate that it channels the air into the windpipe, and a separation because of this overlap between the soft palate and epiglottis that allows food to stay in a completely separate path. As we're looking down the windpipe, you see these two folds on either side. They're in a V shape like this. And when they're closed, they're like that. But when they're open, they make a diamond shape inside there. So that opens the airway very wide, so these animals can bring in a huge amount of air.
But if that's all working, you've got a horse that's an athlete.
Yes.
If it's not working, you have a horse that's in trouble.
Absolutely. This is critical. Because if you can't breathe, you really can't do anything else.
Just want to see him canter. She just needs a good healthy blow.
One of the horses at Williams' yard has been having trouble breathing. The vet's here to diagnose what's wrong. What's the history with this guy then?
This horse, in his last race, he didn't run as well as they expected. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a dynamic endoscope through his nose and have a look at his throat and larynx and see if there's an abnormality there.
And it's great to be able to actually do it dynamically at speed, isn't it?
That's correct, because a lot of the problems only happen when the horse is at high speed. So previously the horses would be examined under treadmill, but that doesn't quite simulate the race conditions.
You look gorgeous.
I'll just put the rest of the tack on now. So this is specially designed specifically for this.
Good boy, good boy, good boy. Good lad, eh? Good lad.
Oh, probably just... all right, boy.
Good lad. There's a good lad. That's a great picture.
Yeah. Just straighten it up.
That's a really great picture. That's amazing.
Okay, well that's it. We're ready to go.
Okay. Out on the gallops, we'll receive live pictures from inside the horse's airway as it picks up speed. Is that him just right down at the end, ready to go?
Yeah, it looks like he's just about to start his gallop.
Okay, so he's moving.
You're getting quite a nice image there.
Brilliant.
You can see everything is functioning just as normal at the moment.
That is brilliant. And he sounds fine. I mean, just listening.
Yeah, he sounds perfectly normal at this stage.
Right, this is the toughest bit for him coming up now, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just coming up the steep part of just the little slope, and this is where the jockeys often try to just push them as they come up the hill to get the last bit of effort. We look at the image there.
Oh, look, and you can see the soft palate
and
starting to flap, and it's gone, isn't it?
It's gone. What we'll do now is we'll just stop this, and then we can get the scope off him, because it just unclips quite nice and easy, and then he can go back to the yard nice and quietly.
Okay.
All right, boy. Okay, there we go.
Good lad.
There we go.
We're looking right down the barrel of the trachea.
That's great.
It really is a fantastic image, this. But at the moment, it is fully open.
As you would expect, a normal larynx at exercise.
Yeah.
This is now the horse in full gallop, and just coming towards the end, you just start to see the soft palate now comes over.
Oh, wow, look at that. Can we freeze that?
We can.
Okay. So you see it beautifully there.
If you think of it in terms of a race, this is when the jockey, coming into the straight, asks the horse for that final effort.
And now you've got the soft palate flapping across the opening, which is essentially completely asphyxiating the horse.
So this is the normal position, with the epiglottis overlapping, making a bridge between it and the soft palate.
What happens is, at full gallop, you end up with the button hole coming over the button like that, and then the soft palate flapping in the way of the airway.
So now you really have an obstruction.
So that there's disruption to airflow, so you get a noise, but also, obviously, if you're trying to get huge amounts of air in and out, you've got disrupted airflow and you can't do that, and that's a serious problem for a performance animal, obviously.
So an unbuttoned larynx cuts down the passageway for air. This is now about half the diameter with this thing.
Yeah, and when they're then at rest, it'll go back like that.
So they can lock it back again.
So they lock it back again. So you won't necessarily see it when they're at rest. It's only when they're galloping. If you put your fingers back up, you just see that flap over, and the animal has a real problem breathing. And as a racehorse...
Oh, forget it.
Forget it. Within every champion, there's something special that drives them to victory.
Phar Lap's got it. Come on, Phar Lap, you beauty.
Phar Lap, nicknamed the Red Terror, captivated the Australian public.
Little temperamental. What star is it?
He was bought for a song and trained for free, but went on to win 37 of his 51 races, including the Melbourne Cup in 1930.
And a new record of 2 minutes, Phar Lap.
It was only later, after he died, they discovered the secret of his success. OK, so let's get this heart out. Catherine, are you happy to get in there with your knife and take that out for us? Get this rib out.
Look at the aorta.
Look at that.
Look at the size
of that.
Just fantastic, isn't it? Wow, and so heavy. I mean, just look at it when you put it on the neck of how big that is. Yeah, in fact, actually, just stand there. I'm going to come in front of you.
Oh, yeah?
Excuse me.
Oh, you're giving me a big heart? Whoa! That is really heavy.
That is massive, isn't it?
It's as big as my whole chest.
It is, and that's big. That's really big.
Now, my heart is only the size of my fist.
Okay, plonk that down there, and I'm going to show you something else.
Okay.
Just look at this. This is a cow's heart, by comparison. Look at the difference.
Obviously, it's not running as fast, is it?
No. So we don't race cows.
No
so
prizes
this is the couch
for
potato heart.
Yeah.
That's the athlete.
Yep.
Yeah.
A human athlete will have a resting heart rate of 40 or 50 and a maximum heart rate of maybe 180. The horse has a resting heart rate of as low as 25 or 30 and a maximum heart rate of about 240. So the heart can really pump very rapidly and pump a large amount of blood around the body.
So we're talking about 4 beats a second.
4 beats a second for a heart that size.
4 beats a second of your heart, 140 respirations a minute.
Yeah.
These are big numbers.
They're good at running.
It's what makes them good at running.
What makes them good at running? They can shift twice as much oxygen per kilogram of elite human athlete.
Wow. The thoroughbred heart is 10% bigger than in other breeds. It plays a vital role in the success of champions.
Farewell, Farlap. You have entered on the last and farthest lap of all.
When Farlap died, a post-mortem revealed the remarkable size of his heart. It weighed over 6 kilograms, nearly double the weight of a normal horse's heart. His rivals didn't stand a chance. There's one final piece of anatomy that can boost this animal's athletic performance: the spleen. It's a huge organ that comes into its own when the going gets tough.
Okay, so we've got one final trick here, Mark. Red blood cells are what carry the oxygen from the lungs to the muscles. When the horse is resting, about a third of its red blood cells are sitting in this organ, the spleen. And as soon as it starts to run, adrenaline makes the spleen contract, and all those red blood cells go into the circulation, and then they help the blood carry the oxygen to the muscles.
So this is like natural blood doping?
Yes, it's just like blood doping. The horse does it naturally, it doesn't need to go to the doctor for it.
It is a neat trick, though, isn't it? We've got huge airway, massive lungs, colossal heart, turbo-boosting spleen, and it's all about getting as much oxygen as possible to the powerhouse back here. Because underneath the skin are the muscles that propel this animal to 40 miles an hour.
And there's 25 kilograms of muscle on each side, and that's all there, pulling this leg back and pushing the animal forward into the next stride. So 140 times a minute, this is all contracting and driving the animal forward.
There's 2 messages here, aren't there? One is how brilliantly adapted this animal is to peak performance, but equally how little safety margin there is.
It's on the knife edge. Most fast animals, a cheetah or a greyhound, are 40 kilograms. This is 500 kilograms and yet can run at 40 miles an hour. It's an amazing challenge of engineering in terms of bones and tendons and muscles to be able to move so quickly and be so big.
5-time group or grade 1 winning Midday, beautifully related, and he is a half-brother to now 6-time placed standout. Yes, a winner in waiting standout.
We've now solved the puzzle of how an animal of this size moves at such high speed.
Thank you, sir. Best of luck with them too.
But another mystery still remains. What makes a champion? So, Johnny, this is one of the lots here.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? You're a bloodstock agent.
You're looking for strength and a fluid movement, everything to happen very naturally and not stilted. This is a lovely horse. I really like the way his action is so fluid. I normally stick my hand under his gullet to check that he's got a nice wide space for his windpipe to go through there.
And how much is that part of your decision-making, and how much is looking at pedigree?
Pedigree will tell you the price. The horse tells you whether you feel that he's an athlete or not.
And honestly, still a bit of a lottery, though. Occasionally, do you make some howlers?
Of course we do. We all make howlers, yeah. You can see the perfect-looking horse get it out in the heath, and it suddenly is as slow as a hearse. That happens.
But the odds of choosing a champion could be about to change, with the help of science.
At University College Dublin, Dr. Emmeline Hill's groundbreaking work is causing a stir in the racing world. Dr. Hill is a geneticist, and she's identified a gene that determines whether a racehorse is more suited to speed or stamina.
So from one gene you can tell if it's right for sprinting or for a marathon?
Well, remarkably, this gene seems to have the greatest influence on distance ability.
So if you can tell this much just from one single gene, what else can we find out about these animals?
We can now tell the likelihood of an individual becoming an elite race performer, how good a horse is.
So an understanding of genetics is loading the dice in your favour.
absolutely loading the dice in your favour. You can try to best evaluate as best as you can from the pedigree, but looking at the genetics is something that you can't see with the naked eye. I suppose it's akin to popping the bonnet of a car and looking at the engine.
Yes. This is revolutionary science, though, and I suppose having an understanding of the horse's genetics might also help its welfare.
Absolutely, they're being managed for what they're genetically made for. That's really the bottom line.
This is an animal engineered far beyond what natural selection would allow. By targeting specific genes, it may be possible to take this process even further. Fast but safe racing is everyone's goal. But for now, the enigma of what makes a true champion remains. Man has created an animal at the absolute limits of what is physically possible. Science can explain their phenomenal performance, but can it predict a winner? Not yet, but it'll almost certainly be the key to their future success.
Knocking down £1 million house to build a modern mansion takes its toll. All new grand designs tomorrow at 9. And tonight at 10, the Chatsworth estate receives some spiritual healing. Not sure that's a good idea in Shameless. And before that, coming up next here are for Craig's inspiring story in Seven Dwarfs.